The Hurricanes make quick work of the Flyers in Game 1, and the Lightning and Canadiens prepare for a climactic 7th game in their opening round series. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate. It is Sunday, May 3rd, 2026. Prior to the opener, Neil, of the Flyers-Hurricanes series, Rick Tocchet announced star forward Owen Tippett would be out with what they're calling a lingering injury, and that he would be day-to-day. And by game's end, Tocchet was saying that the Flyers were mentally unprepared for the opener against the Hurricanes, and it certainly looked it.
Well, they only had 48 hours to prepare from the euphoria of winning their first round in a long time against the Pittsburgh Penguins to taking on the heavily favored Carolina Hurricanes, who had swept the Ottawa Senators and therefore gotten a lot of rest in between that and last night. And I think that the Hurricanes were ready to go. Hurricanes came out right from the drop of the puck, storming.
Other lineup changes, because with Tippett going out, Garnet Hathaway came in, so you're getting maybe a little bit more toughness, but you're certainly losing out in the skill level. And for the Hurricanes, Nikolai Ehlers in, Alexander Nikishin remained out. There was some talk that he would be ready to go, but was not cleared. So instead, Mike Riley was penciled in by head coach Rod Brindamore. It was Riley's first game since April 14th. That was back at the end of the regular season, and that certainly paid dividends for them. We'll get to that in just a second. But any rust that we thought maybe the Hurricanes would have, having not played since a week ago Saturday, that went out the window right away, because it's Logan Stankoven scoring for the 5th consecutive game in these playoffs, tipping in Riley's shot just 91 seconds into the game.
Yeah, it was a high shot. He tipped it around chest high, and that just threw it off for the Philadelphia goaltender. And Stankoven, again, the young guy gets another goal. And as you said, 5 straight goals in 5 straight games.
And Stankoven wasn't done, because 6 minutes later, it's Jackson Blake. Great burst of speed. He splits Matvei Michkov and Travis Sanheim to beat Dan Vladar. Mike Riley with a second assist on the play, and it's 2-0, and you just felt this game was already over.
Well, you could just see the jump that Carolina had in their legs, and this was a whole different team for the Flyers to take on than the Penguins. A totally different look, a totally different game coming at them. And again, on their behalf, they only had 48 hours to get ready to go into the second round.
Flyers did have a couple of chances in that first period, one by Sean Couturier, and then later on a partial 2-on-1. It was Garnet Hathaway, and Hathaway also had a potential breakaway in the second period, but a nice play by Keandre Miller to break that up. But anyway, shots in the first period, totally indicative, 12-4 for Carolina, attempts 20-10. The Flyers were better in the second period, but then a turnover by Noah Yulson with 3:44 left, actually pass that hit off the skate of Andrei Svechnikov, went to Seth Jarvis, and Jarvis to Stankoven for his second of the game.
We're already at 3-0, and it does look like this game is over, because the Flyers just are not making you think that they're going to break through in this one.
And certainly for the Hurricanes, they've not trailed in 9 straight games going back to the end of the regular season. Obviously, that includes the 5 games in the playoffs. Third period was scoreless. There were 56 minutes in penalties between the two clubs, with 4 misconducts, a bunch of roughings handed out, and maybe the Flyers just trying to make a little bit of a statement going into game 2, but completely overmatched here.
Certainly they were, but they'll learn a lot from game 1. Rick Tocchet will take his club back and get out on the ice down there in Raleigh, North Carolina, and try to make the necessary adjustments. I thought that Vladar wasn't as sharp as he had been against Pittsburgh as well.
Particularly on the second goal.
Yeah, that shouldn't have gone in.
So you're going to go to the other end of the ice and start chirping a little bit there?
I thought you would want to go there.
Well, okay, because the anointment now of Freddie Anderson being the greatest goaltender of all time, because in the regular season, his goals against average 3.05, save percentage 0.874, no shutouts. So thus far in the playoffs this year, in 5 games, 5-0, 2 shutouts, 0.90 goals against average, and a save percentage of 0.961. But I don't want us getting over our skis here. I just don't, because I think he has done a very commendable job making the saves he's supposed to make. He's probably had maybe a handful of difficult saves to make during the first 5 games of these playoffs. And this is a testimony to the collective effort by the Hurricanes here.
Well, I think the whole thing is a testimony of the collective effort, no matter what. I'm not sure that Brandon Bussey wouldn't have had these same numbers. I don't think that Anderson has won the games for the Hurricanes. He's just been as good as he needs to be in every game and stopped some amazing opportunities, both by the Penguins and now last night, maybe a couple by the Flyers. But he's doing what he's got to do, and the rest of the team is certainly doing what they've got to do.
I'm stopping short of amazing. I mean, there were a couple of big stops against Carolina, made a couple of good saves, but truth of the matter is, take every single goaltender that has played in the playoffs this year, they would be 5-0 because of the way the Hurricanes are playing in front of them.
Well, okay, you could say that if you want to.
I just
we
did.
don't know that. That's just you. That's just your conjecture. The fact of the matter is, what we do know is Anderson is 5-0 and does have those numbers as we move into game 2.
And good on him for being 5-0. Let's not let that go without saying that. And that second game you just mentioned will come up on Monday, 7 o'clock on ESPN. So the Sunday schedule, while just talked about Carolina and Philly getting their second round series underway, the Canadiens and the Lightning will conclude their series 6 o'clock on TNT. What are you looking for here?
I just want to see jump from Tampa on home ice. I'm wondering if they'll get that. I think there'll be a very physical game coming at them from Montreal. Vasilevsky is going to have to be great, as is Dobish down at the other end of the ice. So I think it's going to be a great game. But as I said, I think Tampa Bay's stars have got to really step up in this game.
Discipline is going to be paramount here, and the star quality, you're right. And I think for Tampa, draw a line under Kucherov, Gensel, Hagel, and Point. I still maintain, despite the penalty in the overtime, that Kucherov was outstanding, which I know you don't believe in that, but I thought he was outstanding in Game 6. And for the Montreal Canadiens, draw a line under their top line of Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Juraj Slafkovsky, and add in Ivan Demidov there. And when you total the goals up at the end of the night, whoever has the bigger number under that line, I think is going to be the winner. We have seen how important role players are in this series, particularly the third line for the Montreal Canadiens, and certainly the support that some of the Lightning have gotten. But these big lines, they have to step up in the biggest game of the season for both of them.
Absolutely, and that's what I said about Tampa Bay. Their stars have got to play at their best, and Montreal, the same thing. Texier has been great for Montreal. Yep. Great pickup to get him from St. Louis for nothing and add him into this mix has been super, and I can't wait to see it get started.
I think you bring up a good point about Tampa Bay really needing to be on their toes here, because maybe sometimes there's that just piece of complacency that sets in that we've got it back in our own building for game number 7. But you got to go back only to last year when the Toronto Maple Leafs had games 5 and 7 at home against Florida and couldn't get it done. And in this case, the Lightning had game 5 at home against the Canadiens, lost that game, had to force a game 7 by winning in the Bell Center. And now that they're home, I just don't think that with the veteran leadership and John Cooper behind the bench, that this is going to happen in this case.
I don't think you've got the players or the coaches or anybody that's actually with the team that thinks, okay, good, we've got it back to game 7. That would be ridiculous. They just lost game 5 at home, so they certainly know they can get beaten at home. Maybe the fans are sitting there, hoping and saying, well, we've got it now, we're going home. But certainly the players and the coaches, they know. They just got beat in game 5 in their own building. They had to go to Montreal and win a tough game to be able to get it back here. And Montreal's more than capable of winning on the road. So I'm sure that everybody will be primed and ready.
And of course, the Canadiens have already won twice in Tampa during the course of this series. And a final note before we leave this game, Canadiens head coach Martin St. Louis says defenseman Noah Dobson is a game-time decision for Game 7. They will assess after pregame warm-up. And again, this game, 6 o'clock on TNT. Also starting this evening, Game 1 between the Wild and the Avalanche. Both teams won twice during the season series, and one of those for both teams coming in shootouts. What are you looking for here?
I want to see if Colorado's rest gives them the jump that it gave last night to the Carolina Hurricanes. And I want to see if Minnesota has the same issue where they didn't get as much rest and they've got to go into Denver, play at that high altitude. How do they come out for this game? So it's going to be very interesting. You could look at it and say, well, maybe Colorado will have some rust on them now. They haven't played for a while. You could look around and say Minnesota will be tired. You coulda, maybe. But at the end of the day, I can't wait for this one to get started too, to see how Colorado and Minnesota fare.
I think this is going to be a very stiff series for Colorado. I think Minnesota is a heavy team. I think that when you look at the back lines, you talk about Makar and Taves for Colorado. Well, you just look on the other side at Quinn Hughes and Brock Faber for Minnesota. I think this series matches up relatively well for the Wild.
Well, they don't have Nathan McKinnon, and that is an X factor for sure. That is the best player playing in this series, without any doubt. So we'll see what he can bring. I think Colorado proved during the regular season that they're the best team in the league, and they're going to have to now win 4 games against Minnesota to prove it.
Well, without tipping people off on our predictions in this series that we'll reveal on Monday, I think maybe people can read between the lines here in terms of how we're going to be going.
Well, I'm not sure. You said you think Minnesota matches up real well against Colorado, so maybe you're going in that direction. I don't know. Anyways, I think it'll be a great series.
And that we both agree on. 9 o'clock Eastern on TNT following Canadiens and Lightning. So other news, it was revealed on Saturday that both Connor McDavid and Jason Dickinson played the latter part of the series against Anaheim with fractures in the foot and ankle area. But besides that, the final media gathering of the season probably brought way more intrigue, because I think it's now acknowledged that in Edmonton, if it's not DEFCON 1 in terms of urgency level for this team to be competitive again and win a Stanley Cup, it's really getting there. And both McDavid and Draisaitl have acknowledged they took steps back this year. They're an average team. And you talk about a hot seat. I don't think anybody in the NHL has their ass on the burner more than Stan Bowman.
That could be true. I'm not sure how he's going to do it. This is not easy to all of a sudden do stuff in the summer to make your team back to a contender again. They're going to have to make a lot of changes, and it'll probably start in goal, where they really don't have the goaltending to be a contender, and move out from there. I think Stan Bowman's going to have his work cut out for him. I think he is on the hot seat, as far as not to be fired, but as far as having to get things done. I don't see it happening, though. I just don't.
Clock is ticking. 2 years left for Connor McDavid potentially in Edmonton. Also making news, Bruins defenseman Charlie McAvoy offered an in-person hearing for a slash on Zach Benson at the end of Game 6. Now, we should say that Benson slew-footed McAvoy towards the end boards, and that prompted the reaction of the slash, which even McAvoy said really stepped over the line there. But, you know, the difference here between the phone and the in-person hearing, if it was a phone hearing, it would top out at 5 games. In this case, McAvoy is being invited in to plead his case.
And going to get at least 6 games. Personally, I don't think it deserves 6 games, what he did. I think Benson deserved to get retribution for that act that he did by slew-footing McAvoy. And I don't see it as a 6-game suspension unless Zach Benson is hurt and can't play in the next round, which isn't the case.
Should some action be taken against Benson? Because slew-footing is one of the most reprehensible acts in hockey.
Yeah, there should be something on Benson, and we haven't seen anything yet. I'm not sure whether there's going to be or not. I know Benson got a penalty, obviously, in that game. I don't know what they called it. They call it tripping. But anyway, we'll see what McAvoy gets. He didn't swing it at his head. I think it hit him in the arm when he came back at him. So,
by the way, it was a tripping penalty that was called against Benson. So that puts that to bed. Join us again on Monday when NHL Wraparound returns. We'll do our second round preview, even though the round will have started for 2 of the 4 series. Craig Button will be back to join us, and we'll also look back at some of our first round predictions, and we're going to have some fun with that, trust us. Also, upcoming spring cleanings this week: Ottawa, LA, Pittsburgh, and Dallas. So, on behalf of Neil, I'm Vic. Enjoy the 2 games on Sunday.